10 underrated, macabre, and emotionally draining horror games you must hunt and play. If a horror game is done right, it can give you the ambiance that no other genre can. While there is a decent fan following for some amazing horror games, they haven't been able to break into mainstream popularity. Of course, there are exceptions like Resident Evil, Dead Rising, and Silent Hill, but in general, horror games are overlooked and undermarketed. It is unfortunate because this is one genre of gaming that has evolved considerably over the years. However, we must add here that even some of the finest horror games can do without the cutting-edge technology. It can be low budget and yet have an unadulterated piece of fear-inducing insidiousness that is capable of charming genre enthusiasts. The modern-day gaming industry might be over-reliant on unbridled spectacle, but true gamers will never underestimate the power of an intense horror game. In this video, we bring you the most disturbing horror titles that you ought to try if you love these kind of games. Let us warn you in advance that it might well be an emotionally draining experience. Condemned 2: Bloodshot, 2008. It serves as a sequel to Condemned: Criminal Origins that released in 2005 and is premised 11 months after the events of the first game. Metro City has gotten a lot worse with the raging violence and mass psychosis among homeless people. Ethan Thomas has become an alcoholic after quitting the serial crime unit of the FBI, and his drunken state causes some unexplained hallucinations. When his mentor is murdered, he is recruited back into the force and goes about investigating the case. He finds out that his arch-nemesis from the first game, Serial Killer X, is still alive and has kidnapped the director of the FBI. As things get worse, Ethan tries to uncover the real source behind all the chaos in the city and trace it to a cult called the Oro. The members of this cult have developed unique sonic powers that help them control humanity, and Serial Killer X is after those powers. He further learns that the members of the cult include some recognized members of society, and he must find a way to stop them from controlling the entire country. This game was developed by Monolith Productions and published by Sega for Xbox 360 and PS3. The first thing that will strike you about it is the immersive atmosphere created in the first-person perspective. It follows the brilliance of its predecessor, and you have some violent interactions with the maniacal citizens of Metro City. There are several moments that will give you the jitters, such as the scenes with the mannequins and the bear. To make matters worse, the weapons break down after being used repeatedly, and throughout the gameplay, you must make sure that Ethan gets enough alcohol to deal with his withdrawal symptoms. The developers did not shy away from the gore and showcase the mutilated killings in great detail. Ethan himself is a fascinating protagonist, and there are times when the lines between the real world and the paranormal are blurred. We loved the stylized effects that amplify the gaming experience, and the sounds of metal against flesh are simply unforgettable. Bloodshot is a classic example of the brilliance that can be achieved simply with a good plot, vivid imagery, and shock value. Stay away from this one if you wince at gore and get nauseated at the sight of blood. Fatal Frame 2: Crimson Butterfly, 2003. Developed and published by Tecmo for PS2, this game was the second installment in the Fatal Frame series. The plot is not a sequel to the first one and is premised in a fictional region of Japan called Minakami. There, a village vanished mysteriously, and an urban legend says that it was caused due to a failure in the Crimson Sacrifice ritual that the village hosted. Twin sisters Mayu and Mio explore the abandoned village and have some strange encounters with paranormal forces. The evil spirit of Sei Kurosawa mistakes Mio for her sacrificed twin sister, and now she wants to complete the dreaded ritual with her. Can the sisters escape the region unharmed? If you are trying to get through a horror game, you probably expect a decent weapon. Well, all you get here is the camera obscura that can be used to exorcise the spirits that haunt the village. The gameplay is tense as Mio tries to protect her possessed sister while also discovering the secrets of the village. She learns the truth behind the creepy ritual, but all she has is the camera. You can use the camera to take pictures of the ghosts in order to defeat them, but it is much harder than you would expect. We were smitten by the perfect mix of psychological thriller elements and jump scares that bind the narrative. The disturbing plot will constantly play with your emotions, and the surviving horror theme thrives in its unpredictability. Some immersive puzzles eventually take you to multiple endings, and we bet you wouldn't expect any one of them. The graphics are breathtakingly beautiful, and the masterful use of light and shadows is the cherry on the cake. Crimson Butterfly makes you feel like you are living inside a horror movie, and we don't know if there can be any better compliment for a horror game. Echo Night Beyond, 2004. This horror adventure was developed by From Software for PS2 and had a bizarre storyline to start things off. Richard is flying to a moon base with his wife Claudia, and they intend to spend their honeymoon at the resort there. However, things go terribly wrong after a supernatural force causes the shuttle to crash land, and many of the passengers are killed. Richard wakes up to find that his wife is missing, and the game is all about him looking for Claudia through the perilous land. The spirits of the base have been released, and Richard starts to explore the base and free numerous trapped spirits. Eventually, it leads him to some strange findings, and he learns that the chief of the facility found a red stone that granted wishes at the cost of life. He finds out that his wife had used that stone to wish that she met Richard and killed herself as a price. Now Richard has the stone, and the choice that he makes will determine the outcome. First, you do not have any weapons to defend yourself, and this is not one of those games where you shoot the ghosts to a pulp. Instead, you must cater to the needs of the friendly ghosts and stay away from the malicious ones. If you stay too long near one of these harmful phantoms, Richard dies from a heart attack, and it is all about how you strategize. This game proved that space could be a perfect setting for a horror game, and the feeling of weightlessness certainly added to the atmosphere. We loved the fact that the protagonist here is defenseless, and his only way to survive is to appeal to the good nature of the ghost or run from it. Echo Night might not sound scary, but there are moments that will make your heart skip a beat. The feeling of uncertainty as you walk around in a giant spacesuit can be quite unnerving. Turning around to stare right into a ghost or watching handprints appearing on your visor might be pretty terrifying as well. Some complain that the game could have been made scarier, and the difficulty levels could have been a bit higher. We, however, are sold by the concept and the mesmerizing effects that make this one of a kind. Siren Blood Curse, 2008. Howard Wright is an American exchange student who arrives in Hanuta courtesy of a strange email message. Throughout the narrative, he has numerous encounters with the members of an American TV crew who vanished completely a few years ago. There are reports of paranormal occurrences and suggestions of human sacrifices as part of some horrific ritual in the region. As alien gods are summoned and deadly monsters known as the Shibito are unleashed, the people try to survive in this nightmarish region. This survival horror was developed by Project Siren and published by Sony Computer Entertainment for PS3. It is a reimagining of the first game of the series with new technology and some new characters that suit the American demographic. You have a series of 12 chronological episodes to play through, and each of them contains parallel and intersecting chapters for different characters. You have to control a player, and the narrative moves ahead in a third-person perspective. You have to be careful about evading the Shibito, and the feature to see through the eyes of others comes in handy. This system of sight jacking is essential to surviving here, and this is what helps you with the clues to the next target. The element of stealth is your biggest friend, and the gameplay puts a special emphasis on the same to survive the levels. We loved the narrative of Siren and the frightening jump scare moments that will send a shiver down your spine. The terrific visuals, perfect atmosphere, and scary cutscenes only add to the disturbing experience. Some people had complaints regarding the controls, but we were too absorbed by the tension-filled turn of events to focus on minor flaws. Overall, this will stand out as one of the creepiest survival horror games that you have ever played, and we strongly recommend trying it out. The Thing, 2002. This game is a sequel to John Carpenter's classic of the same name, and the narrative begins shortly after the events of the movie. Following the massacre of U.S. Outpost 31, a military team is sent to investigate the matter. You will play as this military team and explore the inhospitable surroundings of the region. You have to encounter the powerful shape-shifting alien lifeform which has the ability to assume the appearance of the people it kills. The goal is to work your way through a maze of suspense and confusion and stay clear of the alien monster. This third-person survival horror game was developed by Computer Artworks and published by Universal Interactive and Konami for Xbox, PS2, and Windows. It was released almost 2 decades after the film, but it successfully managed to recreate the eeriness that made the movie so amazing. The isolation is haunting, and everything from the cold weather to the paranoia and the infection is out to get you. One of the most exciting things about the gameplay is the team management that is essential to succeed. You must make the best use of the soldiers, medics, and engineers to work your way ahead. The fear levels must be monitored constantly, and for this, you have to pay attention to the way your teammates act or what they say. There's a wide variety of weapons to choose from, and you have things like sniper rifles, machine guns, flamethrowers, and so forth. The puzzles are top-notch, and visually, this game lives up to the expectations. The expressive faces of the characters, the detailed backgrounds, and the perfect graphics make this a terrific-looking title. They have used the same creepy music from the original movie that sets the mood perfectly. There are some very disturbing moments, and the gore might be unnerving for many. The sights of mutilated corpses and all the bloodshed is worth it for the experience that the thing has to offer. All we can say is that you wouldn't regret a moment of playing this captivating game. Haunting Ground, 2005. Fiona Bell, an 18-year-old girl, is visiting her parents. She gets involved in a car accident, and when she wakes up, she has no clear memory of the incident. She finds herself in a cage inside the dungeon of a castle, and she manages to step out and find out the answers. Soon she befriends a white shepherd named Huey, and together they try to figure out an escape route. Fiona realizes that she is the carrier of an alchemic element called Azoth, and the keeper of the castle seeks it for himself. As a player, you have to control Fiona and use Huey effectively to explore the castle and stay away from multiple enemies. Can they eventually escape and evade the creepy denizens therein? This haunting game was created by Capcom for PS2, and the aesthetics are no less than a stunning slasher flick. As the protagonist, you have to run and hide from the enemies in pursuit, and failure to do so will get you killed. There's hardly any room to relax because the moment you hide from one threat, another lurks around the corner. It is particularly disturbing that one of the enemies is a giant that simply wants to rape you. The only comforting thing in this deadly hide-and-seek game is the adorable dog Huey. The gameplay focuses a lot on your canine friend, and he is constantly protecting Fiona from the dangers that threaten her. However, you must train Huey on the go to make him listen to your commands. We must say that the dog offers a sense of comfort that is much required in this perilous castle. Haunting Ground has been one of PS2's most elusive titles, and for good reason. You will feel vulnerable due to the few lines of defense at your disposal, and your quick thinking is the key to survival. We must warn you that this is not for the faint of heart because of the elements of body horror and voyeurism that might be pretty repulsive. The sense of dread in the narrative will send your heart racing, and you better be prepared for the challenge. Dino Crisis, 1999. This intriguing survival horror game was developed and published by Capcom for PlayStation, and the same team that worked on the Resident Evil series was in charge here. The plot picks up when a team of 4 agents is set to investigate a secret weapons project on Ibis Island. Their target is Dr. Edward Kirk, the scientist in charge, but one of the officers is separated from the group and eaten by a T-Rex right from the start. The agents explore the research base and realize that dinosaurs have caused the mayhem, and while they still need to nab Dr. Kirk, they must send for a rescue as well. Multiple possibilities are on offer as you try to make the right choice in this unforgiving survival drama. For many, Dino Crisis was such a scary experience that they couldn't complete the entire thing. The narrative is as exciting as it is fearsome, and the gameplay is pretty engaging. The addictive nature is undeniable as we spent hours trying to work out the puzzles and mysteries surrounding the narrative. The makers of Resident Evil seem to have worked their magic, and this time they have replaced the zombies with dinosaurs. The gorehounds would be pleased with the morbid brutality and violence that the game has to offer. The detailed graphics make it all the more haunting, and the sound system is perfectly suited for the storyline. The dinosaurs might be a tad slow, but they have the creepy ability to sneak up on you and give you a mini heart attack every now and then. We did feel the need for more than 3 weapons, and the gameplay has minor glitches that could have been avoided. You might get a strong Resident Evil vibe, and some might feel that this is one of the Jurassic Park ripoffs. We wouldn't try to defy any of these notions, but they simply cannot downplay the brilliance of this classic. Deep Fear, 1998. The events of the game are premised 300 meters below the Pacific Ocean in a naval fueling and research facility called the Big Table. There, a nuclear submarine that came for refueling crashes into the base, carrying with it hostile mutants that turn humans into horrifying creatures. These monsters try to destroy the oxygen generators in the facility because the high levels of oxygen weaken them. You have to play as an ex-Navy SEAL, John Mayer, who teams up with a rescue organization to try to rescue the surviving occupants of the Big Table. This survival horror was developed by Sega AM7 and System Secom for Sega Saturn, and it was the last Saturn game that released in Europe. One of the highlights has to be the creatures designed by famous manga artist Yasushi Nirasawa. The musical score, composed by Kenji Kawai, deserves a special mention too, and the unique gameplay leaves nothing to complain about. You have to move John through the rooms of the facility, and at the same time keep an eye on the oxygen supply that is steadily decreasing. If you overuse firearms, the oxygen runs out quickly, and you have to find ways to replenish the oxygen supply. Many gamers have called this a Resident Evil clone, and the similarities are indeed hard to miss. If we must point out any shortcomings in this fascinating game, it has to be the voice acting and dialogue that could have been better. However, the atmospheric narrative and the nail-biting moments far surpass such minor flaws. Deep Fear could have been a greater success if the publishers did not refrain from releasing it in North America. If you appreciate a good survival horror game, this has to be on your playlist simply for the uniqueness that is so hard to find. Eternal Darkness: Sanity's Requiem, 2002. This psychological horror was developed by Silicon Knights and published by Nintendo for the Nintendo 64. The plot is pretty challenging to decipher because each character jumps back and forth through time. Alexandra returns to her family estate after her grandfather is brutally murdered. With the police getting nowhere with the investigation, she looks through the mansion for clues and comes across a secret room that has a book called Tome of Eternal Darkness. The book is bound with human skin, and it contains the stories of various people in the past. This demonic novel explains the fate of those who came across it, and finally, Alex herself has to encounter the fight against eternal darkness. Many people call this Nintendo's first grown-up game, and they are hardly wrong. This masterpiece of a storyteller can be emotionally demanding, with a shocking moments in ample amount. The sanity meter is one of the most engaging things about the gameplay, and every time you are spotted by an enemy, the meter lowers. Once the sanity meter is low enough, you can be sure that something terrible is about to happen. The gameplay is very impressive, and the combat sequences in particular will remind you of some cool action game. Besides this, you will have several puzzles to solve that will test your patience time and again. The jump scares are hard to miss, and the dark themes will get to the best of brave hearts. The gaming mechanics are kind of similar to Resident Evil, but the unique features like the sanity meter will make this clearly distinct. Eternal Darkness has created a legacy of its own, and horror fans will thrive under the conditions they have to go through to complete it.
Soon, he will complete his work. Tonight, as the sun sets on London one last time.
Nightmare Creatures, 1997. Nightmare Creatures is a remarkable survival horror game that was developed by Callisto Entertainment for PlayStation, Microsoft, and Nintendo 64. The game utilizes gothic horror elements from the 19th century, and the narrative starts off with a devil-worshipping cult called the Brotherhood of Hecate. They plan to take over the city of London, but their sinister experiments created some deadly monsters called Nightmare Creatures. The story is premised in 1834, and all of London is seen in a panic-stricken mode with numerous reports of monster sightings. People are changing into grotesque mutants, and the dead are walking from their graves. Ignatius is a priest and a cult expert who finds a lost book with details about the cult. He seeks the help of an immunologist and his daughter Nadia to resolve the chaos. You can play as Nadia or Ignatius as you set out in this unforgiving terrain. The aesthetics are second to none, with some terrific behind-the-back 3D action gameplay. You are tasked with the annihilation of the evil forces, and the path takes you through some bloody mayhem. If you are playing this game on a device capable enough, the higher resolutions will make you feel like you are inside the world. The scenery, the 19th century London life, and the morbid creatures all look breathtakingly real. The creature effects are the real showstopper, and the sound amplifies their grunts and growls to perfection. The gameplay is fresh, and every level looks and feels different from the others. The musical score lifts the ambiance, and it is straight out of a horror movie. You have to ensure that you keep your adrenaline levels high in the game, because that is what will stop you from getting infected. For this, you must slaughter the menacing beasts at regular intervals whilst keeping an eye out for the time limit at the same time. There are some terrific attack combos to pick from, but the challenges are so tough that it won't always be enough. The difficulty level is quite high, and let us assure you that it would take quite some time before you can ace this game. Our verdict is strongly in favor of Nightmare Creatures, but you need patience to stick through the troubling levels and face the horror to come out victorious.